You abandoned this property for a decade. Now it belongs to the community. That voice, sharp as a foghorn, smug as a tax auditor, cut right through the morning mist before I'd even had a sip of coffee, and I swear, I could feel her entitlement vibrating in my bones. There she stood, Veronica Sterling, all high heels and white blazer, right at the edge of my dock, waving some paperwork like it was the Magna Carta. 7 HOA security trucks lined up behind her, all those red and blue lights throwing carnival colors across my lake. A lake I'd once called paradise, and apparently now, so did half the county. I just stared, half amused, half furious, standing on those weathered boards I'd hammered down with my own hands a decade ago, trying to figure out if this was a home invasion or an HOA cosplay convention. My name's Garrett Knox, and let me tell you, if you've never had a control freak in designer shoes try to confiscate your family's land before breakfast, you don't know true American absurdity. Veronica flicked her phone out, those manicured fingers moving at warp speed, the picture of someone used to instant obedience. That changed real fast when I mentioned the property registration that had gone through. Oh, say, 30 minutes before her circus showed up. Watching the color drain from her face, I almost felt bad. Almost. See, she'd been threatening my wife, Madison, all morning, never guessing Madison was the one whose digital signature now made everything legal and binding. Impossible, she choked out. But I just shrugged. The signature belongs to someone who's been protecting this place for the last 10 years while I was gone. Yeah, that happened. Let me back up a sec, because if you've never been mugged by an HOA, you probably wonder how I ended up in this ridiculous showdown. 10 years back, I was just a marine biologist, hunting invasive species and collecting water samples. I stumbled onto this lake by accident, found out it came with a conservation easement, a legal force field against greedy developers, put there by some ancestor who probably never imagined it'd save the place from folks like Veronica. I bought the land from Walter Briggs, a man whose luck had dried up after his factory poisoned the same waters I wanted to study. It was a steal. He needed out. I needed a place to call home, and I spent 2 glorious years cataloging fish, building my own dock, and setting up a cabin disguised as a research station. It was paradise with a purpose, until I got a grant that sent me to Alaska for a decade. But here's the thing, you never really leave a place like this. I paid every tax bill, hired a property manager, set up cameras, and trusted that the legal protections would hold. I didn't count on the Sterlings, Veronica and her husband, Senator Harrison Sterling, smelling opportunity the minute my back was turned. So there I was, 10 years later, watching Veronica's face morph from smug to panicked as my wife's name flashed across her phone screen, and all those fake cops started shuffling their feet like extras in a bad TV pilot. It gets better. Turns out my little research dock was now a full-blown marina, festooned with racing buoys, fuel pumps, even what looked like gambling terminals pretending to be race timers. The Sterling family colors were everywhere, blue and white, like they thought intimidation could overwrite a legal deed. Veronica tried to rally, spitting out threats about adverse possession, community statutes, and abandonment laws. But she'd done sloppy homework. None of those apply when the property's got a federal conservation easement, and hers was the last name anyone should find on a fraudulent transfer. That's about when the real law showed up. More sirens, real sheriff's cruisers this time. And who steps out? Brandon Hayes, Veronica's brother-in-law. His uniform said Sheriff's Department, but his eyes said Sterling Family Payroll. He did his tough guy act, asking for my ID, but I came prepared. Property deed, conservation paperwork, even a bluffed EPA protection order. You gotta play the hand people think you have, you know what I mean? Suddenly, the circus wasn't so fun for Veronica. Then, out of nowhere, a voice called down from the path behind my cabin, a voice I knew but hadn't heard in years. Eleanor Whitfield, my neighbor to the north, retired FBI, vintage pin on her lapel and a banker's box full of evidence in her arms. I've got those recordings you wanted, Garrett. 37 separate incidents. Audio and video. That old lady's porch sitting had apparently doubled as federal surveillance. The mood shifted. Even the security guards started edging back, and one of them, Reynolds, looked like he'd rather face a hurricane than Veronica right now. It all started unraveling. The county commission was live streaming Sterling financial records. The FBI was raiding the family law firm. and Veronica's phone was blowing up with her husband yelling about frozen assets and the feds in his office. The more she screamed, the more pathetic she looked, clutching her phone like a lifeline as the ground crumbled under her feet. Just when you thought the day couldn't get weirder, Eleanor outed the fact that Madison, my wife, the one Veronica had been terrorizing, was the actual county land registrar and the real architect behind every failed Sterling scam. That's when Madison stepped onto the dock, her blazer sharp, her eyes sharper. 10 years, 3 months, 17 days, she'd been protecting this place, quietly blocking every dirty trick, fighting a shadow war with a smile and a paper trail. It was cinematic. Veronica got the call from the FBI right there, told not to leave, agents inbound. Security guards vanished, Brandon retreated to his squad car, and Madison, my wife, let Veronica know exactly what she thought about threatening our daughter with an accident on the way to school. That's the moment you could feel the temperature drop, every person on that dock taking a step back from Madison's fury. Mother bear energy, cold and sharp as lake ice. Helicopters started thundering in, not news choppers, but federal Black Hawks. Agents hit the dock, reading Veronica her rights as she tried to calculate if her yacht could outrun a federal impound order. Spoiler, it couldn't. My wife had already had the engine disabled by a Navy SEAL friend. Yeah, she's that prepared. But the rabbit hole just kept going. Eleanor, now, surprise, also Madison's biological mother, revealed that the lake had been a hub for smuggling. Underwater cages, fake habitats, a storage operation for everything from stolen art to drugs, all hidden beneath my research buoys. The lake I'd tried to protect had become a criminal hub, and the only reason it didn't get worse was that every single criminal act had been documented for years. When the smoke cleared and the federal agents finished their sweep, we learned that the Sterling operation was bigger than anyone imagined. International crime connections, 7 states, dozens of dirty officials. My wife, Eleanor, and the feds had coordinated everything, even using my absence in Alaska as the cover they needed to build the case. That morning ended with the lake swarming with agents, evidence boxes, and, eventually, cheering neighbors, folks who'd lived under the Sterling's thumb for years, suddenly set free. The restoration funds from the seized assets meant the lake would be cleaner and more protected than ever, turned into a federal research preserve, named for our family and our fight. But just as the sun broke over the trees and it looked like everything was over, Agent Rodriguez, head of the federal operation, walked over and quietly informed us that the Sterling operation had triggered an armed response. Boats full of desperate criminals trying to destroy evidence, closing in from every direction. The showdown was chaos, federal agents using the Sterling's own illegal dock fortifications for defense, helicopters chasing off the worst of the attackers, divers recovering containers from the lakebed. In the end, the operation was crushed, evidence was seized, and my once peaceful lake became the epicenter of a crime story so wild, even Netflix would call it over the top. As the dust settled, Madison and Eleanor stood by my side. 3 generations, each having fought for this place in their own way. The lake was safe, the community was free, and the criminals were all in custody or on their way. The restoration, already funded, would begin that month. The EPA, the Justice Department, 3 universities, they all wanted in. Suddenly, my little cabin on the lake was the site of the largest environmental restoration project in state history. 6 months later, I'm standing on my dock, coffee in hand, sunrise sparkling off water cleaner than it's been in decades. Madison hands me a folder. EPA just approved expansion, and law students are arriving next week to learn how to fight corruption from the ground up. Eleanor waves from the shoreline, a new energy in her stride now that her long war is over. Sometimes you win by fighting. Sometimes you win because others fought while you didn't even know there was a battle. So, what do you think? Was justice served, or did it take an army to bring down one family's greed? Did the ends justify the means, or did the means justify the end? Drop your thoughts below. What's the line between community and control, between justice and revenge, between protection and overreach? Let's hear your stories, where you're from, what you'd have done differently, and if you think any community is safe from a Sterling in disguise.